Hello students, today we will learn about chapter number 12, Friction of class 8th. Friction, the force which always opposes the motion of one object over another object in contact with it is called friction. For example, when we push a heavy box kept on floor, the force of friction occurs between the surface of floor and bottom of the box. And in the case of a ball rolling on ground, friction occurs between the surface of ground and the surface of ball. In fact, friction acts on both the surfaces in contact with each other. Friction is a force which occurs when the two objects tend to slide over each other and even when they are actually sliding over each other. Direction of force of friction. The force of friction always opposes the motion of one object over another object. So the force of friction acts in a direction opposite to the direction in which an object moves. In this picture, we observe that when the motion of the book is towards right side, then the force of friction acts on it towards the left side. And when the motion of book is towards left side, the force of friction acts on it towards the right side. So, from this activity, we conclude that the force of friction acts in a direction opposite to the direction of motion of an object. Cause of friction. Friction is caused by the interlocking of irregularities in the surfaces of the two objects which are in contact with each other. When we attempt to move one object over the other, we have to apply a force to overcome interlocking of the irregularities in their surfaces. More the roughness of a surface, larger in the number of irregularities on its surface, and hence greater will be friction. Thus, the force of friction is greater if very rough surfaces are involved. Factors affecting friction. It has been found by experiment that the friction between two surfaces depends on two factors. First, the nature of the two surfaces, smoothness or roughness of the two surfaces. Second, the force with which two surfaces are pressed together. The force of friction, however, does not depend on the amount of surface area of the two objects, which is in contact with each other. Friction depends on the smoothness or roughness of the two surfaces which are in contact with each other. When the two surfaces in contact are smooth, then the friction between them will be small, and when the two surfaces in contact are very rough, then the friction between them will be very large. Friction is caused by the interlocking of irregularities of the two surfaces when one object is placed over another object. If the two surfaces of object are pressed together harder by a greater force, then the friction will increase. Types of friction. Friction is of three types: static friction, sliding friction, and rolling friction. We will now describe the three types of friction in detail one by one. Let us start with the static friction. Static friction, the maximum frictional force present between any two objects when one object just tends to move or slip over the surface of the other object, is called static friction. Sliding friction. The frictional force present when one object moves slowly over the surface of another object is known as sliding friction. Thus, sliding friction comes into play when an object is sliding or moving slowly but continuously over another object. Rolling friction. When an object, like a wheel, rolls over the surface of another object, the resistance to its motion is called rolling friction. It is always easier to roll than to slide an object over another object. So, rolling friction is much less than sliding friction. Advantages of friction. Friction is necessary because it helps us in performing many of our daily life activities. Friction is useful to us because of the following advantages. Friction enables us to walk without slipping. Friction enables a car to move on a road without skidding. Friction enables us to apply brakes and slow down or stop a moving car. Friction enables us to write and draw on paper. Friction enables us to pick up and hold things in our hands. Nails can be fixed in a wall due to friction. Friction enables us to light a matchstick. Friction enables us to cut wood with a saw. Disadvantages of friction. Friction causes objects to wear away. Tiny pieces breaks off a surface when it rubs against another surface. The wear and tear due to friction can happen quickly or slowly depending on the nature of materials of the two surfaces. Friction is harmful to us and considered an evil because of the following disadvantages. Friction wears away the soles of our shoes. The tires of vehicles wear out gradually due to friction. Friction wears out the rubbing machine parts. Friction wears out the brake pads of pedals gradually. Friction wears out steps of staircase in building and foot over bridges. Methods of increasing friction. In some cases, friction is used for us. In such case, we even want to increase friction to make it more useful to us. Friction can be increased by making the surface of an object rough. The surfaces of objects can be made rough in many ways, depending on the situation where these objects are to be used. Before we discuss the methods of increasing friction, we should know the meaning of the term grooves and treads. A long and shallow cut or depression in the surface of a hard material is called groove. Series of patterns made into the surface of a tire is called tread. Friction can be increased by the following methods. Grooves are made in the soles of shoes to increase friction and prevent slipping. Treads are made in the tires of vehicles to increase friction and prevent skidding of vehicles on wet roads. Reducing friction. In some case, friction is harmful to us. In such case, we wish to reduce friction so as to make it less harmful to us. For example, friction between the moving parts of machines cause a lot of wear and tear to the machine parts. It also leads to the production of undesirable heat and loss of energy. So we should make efforts to reduce the friction so as to prevent much damage.